welcome to our episode number 5 of the Chesed Marriage podcast. We are so excited to have 2 of our very, very close friends. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. But when she offered to do this, I was beyond excited because if you don't know them, you need to meet them. So introduce yourselves, please.
Hello, I'm Pasqual.
And I'm Olivia.
And we've known you guys for
like 2 and
About to be 3 years.
about to be 3 years.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get started.
So, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about y'all's backstory and a little bit about your marriage and y'all meeting each other and then kind of coming into marriage. Kind of walk us through, I guess, your story on how it started and how it's grown to where it's at, and we may stop you a little bit in between asking questions on how you work through stuff.
Okay.
Do you want to lead off?
Okay, so when we first met, we were in high school, and we were not in our faith at the time, so I begged my mom if I could go to a party. I was like, look, I'm graduating, I've never been before, can I please go to a party? And she said yes, and then my friend picked me up, and we drove 1 minute away, and the party was at his house. And then there weren't like sparks.
I was about to say, was it love at first sight?
No, he had a girlfriend and I had a boyfriend. So it wasn't anything like that. It was just like at his house. And then eventually we ended up like neither of us had a boyfriend or girlfriend, and we became friends, and then we got super close and we talked all the time, every day. He would bring me like random gifts and those things to my
Squall the
apartment.
saw.
Oh, he was so
Suave over here.
very emotional, which actually ties into the thing that we're going to be talking about today. But he was very open with his emotions, and he was like, I'm going to chase you, and it's going to be known that I'm chasing you. But I was just very like, ugh. And they did not think he was cute, and he had this tiny little man bun. It wasn't even a man bun, and it was just not cute. And so yes, it was really small. It was really small, and I was like, oh, I do not like that. That's not cute. But he kept on. He'd be like, oh my gosh, let's go out to eat, or like just by ourselves, not with our friends. And I'd be like, no, I don't really want to do that. And then he told me one day that he was leaving to the army, and he told me that he was leaving at the end of the week, and I did not believe him. And then the night before he left, he asked me if I wanted to go hang out with him, and I said no. And then the next morning he came to my mom's house, and then he brought me a necklace, and then he left, and I was like, oh my gosh, you really left? Yeah, because I didn't believe him. Mm-hmm. And then he called me when he was about 2 months into boot camp, and I was just distraught. I was like, will you please be my boyfriend? I'm so sorry. I miss you so much. I can't believe you left. He was like, I told you I was leaving. And he actually left to get away from me because I was playing so many mind games with him that we weren't even together ever in the year that we were talking and doing all the things. And I would just tell him, hey, I don't want to be with you, but you also can't go out and like try to find anyone else. And
you're still taken. Don't call anybody else.
And so he was open about that too, and he was like, I cannot deal with this. Like, I cannot. What you're doing to my brain is not okay. And so he left. But then, bam, I was like, you're leaving? No, you're not. I'm still right here because I'm crazy.
So, feeding off her, the necklace that I gave her was a necklace that I wore for a couple of years. And it was a cross. It was one of those people sell them like outside of Walmart. It was like the little metal stakes made into a cross. I wasn't saved at the time. I believed in a God, but I wasn't, our one God. So it was weird. But that was the necklace I gave her. And then I called her like, I think a month in. It wasn't 2 months because basic is 2 months. Oh. I don't want people in the comments, basic is only 2 months. I know this. And she was part of the reason that I did leave home. I just felt like there was nothing home there for me. It was me and my brother in the house. I didn't have any other connections to be here. Like, there wasn't nothing for me here. Couldn't afford college. I was stuck at a job that probably wasn't going to take me anywhere. So I was just like, I've always had an interest in the service. So I was like, okay, cool, let me leave. Trying to think of what else.
How did y'all handle that part where you're separated, right? But at the same time, you're trying to somewhat build a relationship. At least you were. She may not. Right? You're still trying to build a little bit of a relationship. How'd y'all work through that with the communication?
It was hard. Like I said, when I called her, she is like, "Oh, be my boyfriend." I was like, "Okay, yeah, we're gonna do this." And
I hold on, because I do want to preface this by saying we are not people that feel things lightly.
Yep.
And I feel like there's a difference with people that do and don't, because I feel like everything with us is all or nothing, full emotion or no emotion. Mm-hmm. You're with it or you're not. And so
I think that's actually really important as it plays into when you do give your life to the Lord, which you will talk about later, because
yes.
y'all have been 100% all in for 2 years now.
Yes, and it's but I do want to because some people are like, you're so young, like it's not that deep. But for us, it really was. It was like, this is our life, this is what we're doing, and okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, we would write letters, and one day I got a letter, and she broke up with me.
No.
And like 2 weeks after, she had asked me to be her boyfriend, and I was like, okay. So like I had we were able to have pictures in our lockers at Basic. Well, I put all her letters. I kept all her letters, all her pictures, which I believe we still have somewhere in storage.
I have all of it.
Yeah, and I sent them all back to her, and that was it. Like, it wasn't a thing. I put like okay on a piece of paper, and that was it. Sent everything back. So it wasn't just like, oh yeah, we're together, and then it was just flowers and rainbows. No, it was still a very bumpy ride. A lot of downs before we had any kind of ups.
Yeah.
But we weathered the storm.
And then I went to go see him at Basic. And I didn't really care if he wanted me there or not. I was just going to go.
So you broke up with him and then you went to go see him?
Yes.
And y'all weren't even married. Y'all weren't even like married.
No.
Nope. We were nothing. Literally nothing. And or I didn't even ask him if he still wanted me to go. I was just, all of our friends were going. There's like a group of like 11 of us, and we've been in the same group chat for 9 years now. Mm-hmm. And so everybody was going, so I wasn't just not gonna go. And they all knew that we were a weird dynamic. And I had just gotten in the car, and I was like, we're gonna make this 16-hour drive to go see him. And then I went to go see him, and I was like, hey, come on.
I didn't mean it.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean anything I said. Let's just get back together.
Pascual, I'd have been like, I didn't get that letter. What are you talking about? Just see what she would have done.
Were you surprised to see her?
Yes. I was surprised to see all the people there because I graduated from Fort Benning, so Georgia. And like she said, it was a 16-hour drive, so honestly, I didn't expect anybody to go. I was like, y'all are going to drive 16 hours all the way up here? I think I got to spend like maybe 5 hours with them, and then that was it.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool, though, the dedication of friends, the support network.
Yeah, and we're trying to get them to come to church because we love them. But it's a whole different thing. So yeah, like 11, it was like 11 of them all showing up, and like I was like, oh wow, like these are the people that I'm going to go through life with, and we have. Doesn't mean it's been all sunshine and rainbows there, because it hasn't, but we love them. We're trying to get them to come to church. I think my dad showed up, and that was the only person from my family that actually showed up was my dad. Mm-hmm. And so when I talk to my friends, I tell them like I love y'all like my family. Yeah, when she showed up, I was like,
and I was looking good.
Yeah.
I bought a new dress. I did my hair.
She's like, hey, I'm like,
who you be?
Who are you? Who this?
hey, what are you doing here? But
but there you were. There you were.
yes,
You loved it.
yes.
So you made it through that, and then what was the next kind of phase that happened?
When did y'all like actually decide to get married, and why?
So we did maybe like a year of the on and off thing, and because it was just really hard. Because he was gone and I still lived at home, and then we actually did get engaged one time in there, and then a little bit before he deployed. Well, this was the first deployment date because they ended up pushing it back several months. We were engaged. I was getting all the wedding preparation together, and then he called me in what I want to say was a drunken state, because he, like I said, was very emotional. But at this time, I could tell that he was changing, because he wasn't just the I love you and I want to shower you with roses even though you're crazy and give you all the things. He was becoming a different person. And so that played a huge part in like the real like meat and potatoes of this. But he called me and he was like, oh, ha ha ha, like I actually don't want to marry you and I don't want to have any kind of future with you. And he was like laughing and hung up. And then I had to cancel all the wedding stuff. And then we didn't talk for like a month. Mm-hmm. And then he had to come home for, I don't know, because they gave him a 2-week leave before that deployment date. And he came back home and he was like, I'm so sorry. And at this point I was like, hold on, because I thought we were past the whole little like mind game thing.
Games, yeah.
Yeah, and to me that was really serious. But then it took a little bit, but we ended up getting back together, and then I went to go see him in El Paso a few months later because his deployment date got pushed back, and I got pregnant after you had your final 2-week leave before deployment. Mm-hmm. And then he left, I was pregnant, had the kid, and he came back home and he was like, hey, I really want you guys over here with me, but you can't do that. You can't, he has to live in the barracks unless he's married. And so in order for us to go over there and not be paying 2 rents and doing all the things, we had to get married. And so we just decided in the car, it wasn't anything crazy. He was like, well, I want you guys over here. And I was telling him that I didn't want him to marry me just so we could live over there. Because to me, I was like, if we get married, I want it to be forever. And he was like, no, I'm not marrying you because of that. I wouldn't marry you if I didn't love you. And it was 2 very emotionally and mentally immature people in the Taco Bell line, and we decided we were just going to do it. And then...
I mean, I think that it may seem crazy to y'all now, right? But I don't think it doesn't surprise me because there's so many stories we've heard from people that it's very similar. Yeah. It's an not emotional, it's not like the clouds and sky opened up and a dove came down and they're like, we're getting married, right? It's not this Hollywood thing, right? And I think that they carry that a little bit in their marriage, at least at the beginning, because you do have that quasi-honeymoon phase, right? And then that wears off, the endorphins wear off, that what I guess with scripture, it's not in scripture, but that Greek word there, that eros type of love starts wearing off, and then you got to figure out, is this going to be a phileo type of love, an agape? Can we grow to that? Can we not? And that's where the work sets in. And a lot of times it seems like when you get to that point where it's going to start causing more work, right?
That's when people back away.
You back away because it's like, well, it's not even real because we just decided in the Taco Bell line. Yeah. Or we just decided because financially we had to not. Or
we have a baby.
And so you see that a lot happening. Mm-hmm. And I would like to talk to y'all about that point though, because I would be ignorant to say that maybe some people listening, maybe their marriage, because knowing y'all now, I know you'd probably say, hey, maybe it didn't start off exactly right, but we got where we wanted to be, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How would you encourage somebody that's walking on that part of the road that hasn't got to the working to where they want to be or even know a way to get there, that they're still at the part where, hey, maybe we didn't start where we wanted to start?
Honestly, I would say hang on. Marriage is a covenant the way we learned, because there was so many times our first year was like, okay, hey, we're done with, like, you can go back home, because we lived in El Paso. I was like, you can go back home. Well,
I spent majority of our first year of marriage on the couch,
and we were fine because it was like, yeah, we were married, but to us marriage was a piece of paper.
Right.
It wasn't an actual like, hey, we're all in this, we're like
That covenant.
Yeah, it wasn't like that. Because growing up the way I did, I really can't name any successful marriages that I've seen until I started coming to church. So, like, my parents were divorced. Majority of my family's divorced. So it's just like,
it's almost like that's what happens.
yeah,
like you get married until you don't like it, then you get divorced and you go find something else.
It's the norm. It's like, okay, hey, if she's not listening to you or she doesn't want to do what you want to do, okay, just kick her out and then move on to the next one. She can tell you the same thing. That's where her family is as well. So we were both just like, okay, cool. It is what it is.
Right.
But to touch on the part of that problem, that is kind of where, I guess, like, because I'm looking at my notes here, that's where it starts. So when discussing, you know, the trauma and how it affects your marriage and things like that, when it started to get hard and we were kind of deciding, are we actually going to do this or not? It was at first a comfort thing because we have not done any part of adult life without each other.
Right.
And so even now, like, if you were to ask me, but now I understand God's first, but even now it would be, what would I do? What would I do if he was not part of my everyday life? But the individual issues that we both had created just these walls, and I couldn't get through to him and he couldn't get through to me, and it was kind of, I want to say my expectation, because I feel that I had a lot to do with a lot of the times that didn't go right, because we would get into it and I would have so much stuff just from growing up. And I watched the thing that you guys did with Ann and Siri, and Ann was saying that she grew up around men that were not safe.
Yeah.
So same. And in my mind, when I met Squall, I was like, he is safe. And he was so confident. It later became arrogance. But we'll get there later.
That's a fine line.
Yeah. No, but it did. No, he was real boosted. But I saw that he was taking care of himself and he was working and he could make decisions that were not stupid, and he didn't care if you agreed with him or not. And so I felt very safe with him. And then when things started getting crazy, I felt like, you're weak. And so because I had put him on such a high pedestal, and my expectation of him was, you're going to be the strongest man I know. I can't see you any other way. You cannot fail in any area. And so when he would start...
Everything. You're going to be my everything.
Yes, I had him way up there. And so as soon as he showed any kind of, I'm angry at you, or, hey, I have an issue I'm trying to work out, but it was also very weird because he stopped being emotional, because his time in the service did change him.
Yeah.
And so he's not the same person. And he didn't know how to deal with that except to drink. And so I also drank, and then it was just, you can't get anywhere. And I would see him and I'd be like, I can't believe this is what you've turned into. And in my mind, it was just, I cannot be surrounded by another weak man. And I didn't want him to be dangerous to us.
Because the pattern you told is you're weak, you can't make decisions, then you're going to hurt me.
Yes.
And so you're trying to cut it off before it gets to that point.
Yes. And I was like, we can't do this. Like, I didn't know how to stick it out per se, except for the fear of failing marriage, which turned into, well, I'll just sleep on the couch because I don't even know what to do.
Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm not going to get close enough for you to hurt me, but I'm not going to leave because I don't want to feel like a failure. So we're going to be in this limbo, this in between, where we're just kind of
Ghosting.
Yeah, the roommate phase,
Yeah.
as we call it now. Another thing I want to say, because you had asked, what was the question? What advice would you give? Basically, like, seek out help. Seek out somebody to counsel you, because that goes a long way when you can turn to somebody who has a successful marriage and be like, hey, we're struggling with this. We do it to this day. We've gone to a couple's house and we sat down at their kitchen table and talked about an issue, and they've told us, this is what y'all are fighting. This is why it's not working.
Yeah.
Like, y'all aren't seeing eye to eye. Because, I mean, we didn't have anybody to turn to when we needed help in our marriage. Everybody we knew was divorced, so any advice we got was like, divorce. Just divorce them. Move on, bro. Like, and she can tell you the same thing. They were telling her the same thing. Well, just divorce him and then put him on child support. You'll be all right. And that's not what you need. You don't. That's not what marriage is for. You know, it's not just okay, well, you didn't do something I wanted you to do, so I'm leaving. Or this isn't what I thought it was going to be, so I'm leaving. Like, marriage isn't what you think it's going to be, honestly.
Right. That's a huge point.
Yeah.
Because no matter what your expectations are or your ideas of what marriage is going into it, it's not going to be that. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
But the interesting thing, though, when you're talking about at the beginning, the emotional side that Liv's talking about that you had was that emotional intelligence that you had inside, right? The sensitivity, right? The heart of the Father. Whereas the security aspect that you're looking for comes in, I'm willing to follow and be with someone, but you got to be able to lead me.
Yes.
And so it's godly traits that you both had, but they had gotten skewed, right?
I want to bring that up, though. Okay, so I'm so glad that you said that. Neither one of y'all had been raised in church ever.
I think I went for like Christmas and Easter. Maybe sometimes.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
So here's the thing. It's like and it's something that is just so beautiful from the God that we serve. And it's that he puts these innate desires in us as he creates us, right? And what media, what culture, what friend groups, social groups will tell you is that, well, that's just you. That's just who you are. And it's like, no, God put his fingerprint on each one of our hearts. I mean, whether or not you want to admit to it, if you choose to not read the Bible, if you choose to not go to a church because it's a, organized bunch of hypocrites, whatever it is, all of us have an innate desire to do these things. We have these roles that we want to fill, and that's something that society and culture keeps pushing farther and farther away. Like the tenderness of Squall, like that is something that was given to him by the Lord, whether or not he knew who he was or not. I mean, and just your desire to fully seek out in commitment, that was a desire that was put in you from the Lord, whether or not you wanted to acknowledge it was him or not. And I just think that that's when I say, and I've said it before, and I said it with Ann and Siri, the length, when scripture talks about the length of the love of God, and you cannot understand it and you can't describe it, just that the length that he's willing to wait, his loving kindness that he's willing to wait for us to finally recognize and realize who he is.
Steadfastness.
The steadfastness, yeah.
In the New Testament says that in the New Covenant, he's written his laws on the tables of our heart. Because it says, no longer will you have to say, know the Lord, because you will know the Lord, because his laws are written on the table of your heart. Yeah. So in that, there's not this searching like the ancient Jews had to have. There's embedded in the essence of who we are now. It's there, which is why you see it. Yeah. And the world and the culture keeps fighting it. And then they're looking for identity in that and purpose in that. And then they want, well, if I just got this, I'll have it. But it's always unfulfilling because it's not going to be found there. Right. Sorry, we kind of cut you off on a tangent, but we've seen that a few times, especially in the last week or so. And so we were wanting to touch on that before we moved on. So then, what's the next part you wanted to share?
So you come back. Okay, so you'd served, which, by the way, how long did you serve, Squall?
4 years.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. And you weren't you in Iraq?
No, I was in Syria.
Yeah, even better.
2017 to 2018.
Enter trauma.
Absolutely.
Enter a lot of trauma.
Oh, that's where I was going. Okay, go ahead.
You had brought up, your God-given talents. And I know there's a page in here. I just can't find it. And I was trying to skim through it. But, yeah, there's a page in here that literally says, these are your God-given talents. And then your trauma is, like, puts up walls, whether you realize it or not. Like, everything you... all your emotions, all that, right, is God-given. Whether you realize that or not. I wish I could find the page, but I can't.
Because God has emotions.
Yeah.
And we like to think of him, or we think of him sometimes as stoic, but he does have emotions.
And like she said, I know that was one of my God-given talents, was that emotional side, which I'm slowly feeling coming back when we went on our date night a couple weeks ago. I'm like, oh, well, Squall, you're talking a lot. Like, I've been praying a lot about it. I want to get back to the person I was. Will I be there? 100%. Who knows? Only God knows. I pray about it, and I'm sure people at church can tell you too. Like, I'm opening up. I'm talking a lot more. I'm going out of my way to talk more, as opposed to when we first started coming to church. I was just kind of like,
observing.
hey, yeah. So to see that other people are recognizing it, like, warms my heart. I'm like, okay, cool, because I know my heart was hardened, and when I came back to church, that was one of my big things. Was like, I had such a hardened heart. Like, I really did. Can't even say my emotions were a thing, because I really just didn't care. I was like, okay,
You've been calloused by the experience.
I was like, I've been through worse things. Like, a divorce in my marriage isn't going to do anything to me. So,
which sometimes people would see as strength.
Yeah.
But I would argue it's a coping mechanism, right?
That's the way I saw it. I saw it as strength. I was like, okay, cool. I have the ability to turn my emotions on and off. And really, it was me being weak and just hiding behind it. That's what I think it was.
I'm just like, I can hear.
Okay. I'm going to step out for just a second. Our kids are, they're in the next room, so I'm going to step out for just a moment. I'll come right back.
And you can find the page.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find the page.
This is actually, so while he's looking, we, last year, we started in January. This was for veterans that were struggling with PTSD and facing their trauma and trying to overcome it. And it was a marriage class, yes, but it was more for us to give our spouses, which in this case was all men, it was to give the men a safe space to be able to talk to other veterans, because no matter what I did, which also caused another problem emotionally, it was no matter what I did, I wasn't going to understand.
Right.
And there was no possible way I could unless you shipped me overseas and I saw the things he saw. And so I would hold that against him. But it was 8 weeks or something. No, 12 weeks.
This was 12 weeks.
It was 3 months. And it walked through each step of, this is how you've let it affect you, the bad fruit you're bearing, and then helping them to get over the guilt that they held within themselves, walking out of that, what it looks like if you can't forgive yourself, and all those kinds of things. And this really helped us, because had we not taken this class, there would have still been a ton of emotional walls.
Well, and it's hard because we've talked very little, or we've talked some, but not a whole lot about it. And there's other individuals that have served that I've talked with, and it's hard to truly have full intimacy with your spouse when you feel like there's an area of your life that you can't share. And it's not that you don't want to share, but you don't. I haven't been there, first of all, but I've talked to, probably a dozen of the guys, and the common theme is it's not necessarily they don't want to not go there. They don't want their spouse to have to feel like they go there and have to deal with it. And we shared it a few episodes back with a first responder, because similar things can happen, right, with first responders that aren't overseas, but they're here dealing with traumatic events and having to do things and help things and see bodies in state that they shouldn't have to be in, right? And they don't want to put that weight on their spouse. And I think, though, the huge part in this is, and we actually talked about it Wednesday night, and I know y'all are serving, so y'all didn't get to hear that session, but the weight of part of it is, and Sari talked about it last podcast, being able to give it to the Lord. And you can still have that intimacy with your spouse. You give the trauma, the issue, to the Lord, which means, Lord, I don't know why, this is a real experience that I walk through. This is how I'm feeling. The emotions are real. The thoughts are real. The feelings are real. But I know that you're bigger. And and I'm going to give them to you to help me process through these, but don't let them affect my marriage or my kids. And let me be as whole here as possible, because we act like war and we act like this stuff is new. It wasn't. David and them, they were told to go kill every man, woman, and child. And that's what when I talked to the other individual on here, I was like, you don't think they didn't have PTSD after some of that? And that's a different discussion, right? But the point of it being, though, God's big enough, he can deal with it. Whatever it is, financial, infidelity, fertility issues, right? All of the gamut, right? A past that you're trying to overcome, a stronghold. But it's like the difference between, and we talked about it then and now as well, the difference is submitting it to the Lord versus people trying to deal with it on their own. Because the other gentleman we talked to had the same thing. His way of processing it was drinking too, because there's an actual numbness that happens with that. And that's why they call it taking the edge off, right? And the Lord doesn't want you to feel like you have to take the edge off. It's just like if your kids were really struggling with something, do you want them to go chase a juice box to get a high off of? Or do you want them to come talk to you and you help them walk through it? Right? Yeah. And it's the same concept times a million, but when it's us, we feel like we're a burden.
Yes.
And we're not a burden. Right? But I also think, too, as people, as friends and support networks around, and especially other men in particular, that you can be a sounding board. And that's what happens like a men's group in particular. We have those sounding boards because there are some things that initially maybe you want to talk to another man about to help process through before you go to your spouse, right? And a lot of guys aren't comfortable just going to a church and going and talk to a pastor or someone, right? But once they get to know an individual and they have a relationship, it's like your friends that drove 16 hours, right? They'll bleed for you. And you can sit and talk to them, but it may not have been the wisest of counsel at that time. Yeah. Right? But having brothers that will do that and people that can stand in that gap, right? That it really helps, because sometimes just saying it releases that stronghold.
Absolutely. That's literally what this whole 12-week led to, was talking about, your trauma, right? It's called Reboot Combat Recovery, which is all trauma. And the entire thing is talking about your roots. If you have bad roots, you're not going to bear the good fruit.
Right.
And whether it's childhood, teenage, or adulthood, if you're holding on to it and it never comes out, it's just getting worse and worse, and it's eating at you until one day you're just going to kind of like, it's going to come out eventually. And it's probably going to be in a bad way. I know the metaphor we used in this was like, we put it in a box, put it on the closet in the back, and
you hide it.
Yeah, you hide it. And then, or if you're talking about your heart, you just put it in the back corner and just, forget about it. That's not the way it works. Because those are your roots. Like, you're going to know that. So if something triggers you, like my PTSD, one of my triggers is loud noises. If I hear loud noise and I can't identify it, I will freak out. Like, I'm like scanning the room. She didn't know that for the longest. And now that she knows that, she helps me identify these. So now we're able to go out into public, because I could not do public. Loud noises, the mall, stuff like that, I couldn't do it. And now she's able to, hey, it's okay, that was over there, it was a balloon or whatever it was. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, this is so much easier now that we're a team, instead of me still holding on to my individual trauma. And now, like, instead of it's not a weight to her. Now it's somebody who, she helps me lift that weight at that time.
Which is beautiful, though, and there was an analogy they gave at one of the marriage conferences a few months ago. And the aspect of that one is something that the enemy had taken and tried to make you feel siloed and ashamed of. When you're at the point you can share it and talk about it, they gave the analogy, you have 360 vision now, because you can stand back to back. And whereas you could only see the front, now you have a partner that can also help you see what's going on behind you, and you actually end up in a more secure place.
Absolutely.
But I think it because we've been married almost 6 years, but we've been together almost 9, and we were so I gave him very much reason to think that he could not share those things with me, because of the fact that I had these expectations that I myself could not reach. And I knew that.
But almost all of us do, but we won't admit it.
Yes.
Because the expectations we have for our spouse, 9 times out of 10, we don't even carry them ourselves.
Yes.
Because I'll get frustrated with Megan saying, you're on the phone too much or this, why aren't you spending time with us, why aren't you this or that? But the moment I'm not driving in the car or something, I have to answer an email for work or a text or something, I catch myself doing the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And the Lord puts that little bit of conviction, not condemnation, but conviction in saying, you're putting this expectation on her, but you're not even holding yourself to it. Mm-hmm. And there's a maturity that comes with that and recognizing it.
It was, I did not come to that understanding until after we had been in church. Which, I mean, we'll get there in just a little bit, but I know we're talking a lot about his PTSD right now, because that did really change our dynamic, but it was also, I am very thankful for how God has brought him back, but he was so disconnected. And so anytime he had even a little issue while we were living in El Paso, it was, well, I'm not going to talk to you because you don't understand. So I'm going to go talk to the people that I deployed with. And then I was hurt because I was like, I will never have a bond that deep with you.
Right.
I could tell you all day long that I will die for you. I love you that much that I would die for you. But I've never been put in that situation. Right. And so with the people that he had been in that situation with, he was like, yeah, but I know they actually will. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to test them. And
it feels unfair, right? Because it's like, I can't. Like, there's physically nothing I can do.
Yes.
And he's not necessarily saying he wants you to go to Syria, right? but he's like, yeah, get on that plane and get your hiney to Syria and go experience that, right? But at the same time, though, it creates a real wedge.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Because he would leave at, say he was having a hard time or we were fighting or whatever. He would leave and go talk to whoever it was, and then he'd just come back whenever he felt like it, I guess. And it was super disheartening, and so it made me more upset. And I was like, you see, like, you can't even talk to me? You are so weak. Like, you're mentally weak, you're emotionally weak. I don't understand it. And then so I would just beat at him with that, and then there goes more wall and more wall. And it was just getting harder and harder. And then he would...
Let me ask something, though, for the people on the podcast. Think through the critical thinking path of what Liv just described. The enemy took an experience that Pasqual had that the natural reasoning and in good intentions was trying not to harm his wife by downloading stuff that he didn't want her to have to bear because of the weight of it. The enemy then took that to drive a wedge to where they couldn't communicate, which then drove into her insecurity at the time of, you're weak, you can't do this, which is a familiar spirit, right? Because it's attacking where they know she's weak on this, because it's a predisposition to want to pull away, which then's going to feed back into squalls. See, I can't trust her with this. Mm-hmm. And you break down the critical thinking path of all of this, and I know they're going to get to it because I know their story, but all it takes is one of them stopping it. Mm-hmm. And that whole cycle stops. And it's not on Pasqual and it's not on Liv. I would argue it's on the man, because being the spiritual leader of the house, we need to be the one that takes the brunt and start, which I know he did, and they're talking through it. But think through the critical thinking path, because you may not be in this specific situation, but in every marriage, in our marriage, the same cycle was happening. The enemy doesn't know anything different. It's the exact same cycle. Now, he'll tweak the little variables, because I didn't have an experience in Syria, right? And Megan didn't have an experience where she didn't trust men from her home. But there was a different set of circumstances that caused the same spiral for us. That it took us stopping and saying, wait, hold up, this isn't right, just like they're going to get to. So guys, this is applicable to any situation you're in. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just so think through the critical path of what the enemy's doing here to break down this marriage, because it's wash, rinse, repeat. It's the same thing in every story. Mm-hmm. But the reason we like talking to these different couples is so you can see it from every different perspective, to see the tactical things that they did to break it. Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. And then another... the way that was slowly, we were, well, I can't trust you with this and I can't trust you with that. Before, we had gotten pregnant and we lost the baby, and he was already kind of changed by this point, because he had already It was a little bit after we got married, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. This had to happen like when you came off the plane. And it was, because I didn't even know. We discussed this maybe a month ago. We were looking at our wedding pictures for I don't even know why. And Joelle was like, oh, Mommy, you had a baby? And in my head, I was like, no, I had just had you. And I was still big from it. And then I was like, hold on. I was pregnant at our wedding. And I didn't know. Well, that created a weird, like, you don't understand. Because, no, I didn't know I was pregnant. But the way I miscarried was traumatic because it happened in a gas station. So then I'm holding the little... it was a mess. And then so he was trying to comfort me. But at the same time, he was, real fresh off deployment. And so there were things that he needed a lot of help with. And it was like... you don't understand. Well, no, you don't understand. And
like, no, I need your help.
Yeah.
I can't help you. I need help.
You need to stuff your emotion just down because I need you right now. And no, I didn't know I was pregnant, but even after finding out and then you go and you're like, oh my gosh, I was pregnant. I just lost a baby. And so that was a lot, but it was just another layer of you don't understand, so I can't tell you. And well, you're not letting me understand, so how can I help you? And then Joel had a lot of issues while we were in El Paso, and he was gone a lot. So majority of the time it was just me and Joel. And there were nobody, I didn't know anybody over there, so who was going to help me? Nobody. Yeah, so it was constantly we were at urgent care, or he was in the hospital, or I had to take him back to the doctor, and he wasn't feeling good, and all these things. And so we had to... I felt, well, I have to do everything alone. Like this is a super heavy burden when you have, when you have a child who has issues, and I can't go to you because you're physically not here, but when you are here, mentally you're not. So it was situation after situation of you don't understand me, but neither one of us was willing to say, okay, let me pause for a second because you need me and we can figure this out. It was, I need you right now, and if you can't be here right now, I'm done. Oh, I was quick out the door, let me tell you. As soon as something was done...
Had that fast pass.
Yeah. I was
Skip
like,
the line.
I'm going back home. Straight. Do not pass... It was crazy. It was... Collect $200. It was a mess. It was constantly... but I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the marriage the whole time.
Yeah.
Just because I was taught you always have to have a backup plan.
An exit strategy.
Yes. And which is that is so crazy to me
when
now.
you slow down and think about it. Yes. But when you're in the moment and that's the culture, that's the only culture you've ever seen, it makes sense. Because if marriage is just a piece of paper and it's just financial and convenient, that makes 100% sense. When you strip the covenant out of the marriage, it makes 100% sense.
And it was just, eventually it got so bad. And it was just fight after fight after fight, and it was just getting worse, and it was getting worse. He kicked me out one time. It was a mess, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And then finally, I had Jolene. I was pregnant with her, had her.
Before we get there, the only way we could be around each other is if we were drinking. I was always at work. I was working all the overtime, coming home, and then we were drinking. She was getting off work. That was the only way we could not fight.
Were you still in the service at this point, or were you doing...
No, I was already out. I think I was only in the service for like a year after I got home from deployment.
No, you come back. Somebody's crying.
That's one of the twins.
And even then... up to our son's first birthday, he was born, I think I met him when he was 4 months old. That was the day I got back from deployment. He turned 4 months. At his first birthday party, I had only been in his home for 4 months. They were shipping me off to Cali. We got rapidly deployed to Poland. So it was just a bunch of training exercises going on. And even then when I was home, it was still like, we're drinking. We're going out. That was the only way we could cope with each other. If there wasn't alcohol involved, it was like, we couldn't stand each other.
We just sit there like staring at each other, like, what do we do?
Yeah.
And why do you think that was, though? Because I say that because, and I'm not trying to make you relive it, but I'm willing to bet there's people out there that can relate to this part of the story.
Oh.
For me, it just loosened me up. I was a ball of fun. And so I was like, this is what he enjoyed anyways when we first got together. So I need to be fun. I got to be fun. And I can't stand his attitude anyways. And it was becoming, it was getting to the point where I didn't like him as a person.
Yeah.
And so but when you're drinking and you're numbing, it was, well, I mean, you're not that bad when I'm drinking. You're all right.
If I squint my eyes and turn to the side, you look good, baby.
You look kind of cute right now.
It's the numbness, right? It's we're drinking, and so all the problems that we're having are like to the side right now. Right now, I'm worried about drinking this beer or whatever you're drinking, and that's all I'm worried about. I'm worried about having a good time tonight. You're not worried about your actual issues going on. Is the way I saw it.
But it got worse when we moved back home.
No, it got a lot worse when we moved back home, because over there, I know there was a handful of people we would go with. Down here, it was like everybody wanted to go out. Because they're like, oh, you're back? I'm like, yeah. Oh, let's go.
High school
like,
2.0?
Yeah. I was like, oh, yeah, let's go. And it just got worse and worse until it was at the point where it was like, I'm coming off work, whether it was days or nights. I had some type of alcohol in my hand when I got home, whether it was in the shower. And mind you, we still had a kid, and we weren't
would
getting...
leave him on the weekends. Yeah. We would drop him off with my mom. And I'd be like, this is like, we're just gonna go out. We need to decompress. And so in my head, I would tell myself, well, we're good parents though, because we would drink, like at home, it would be, you're slow, because you're not out or anything like that. And it was, well, with dinner, well, before bed, to help me go to sleep, things like that. And then on the weekend, it was, for me, when I start, I don't know how to stop. That's so I just don't even drink anymore. But it would be, well, I gotta leave my kid because I can't bring my kid around this.
Right.
And so in my head, I was like, but I'm keeping him safe because he's not with me.
Rationalizing it.
Yes, and you're trying, and so me personally, I would tell myself, I know how I'm gonna get, and so I'm like not even talking into I would say, I know how I'm gonna get, so let me drop him off, and I would pick him up a little bit the next day, and then he'd be like, hey, we're going out. Okay, cool. So I'd drop him back off. And then we'd pick him up on Sunday. And then Sunday was kind of like cool, like family time, if we weren't fighting. And from there, that is when it got awful. It got awful. We were screaming at each other all the time. Neither one of us, though, this whole time, was willing to be emotionally available. So it got to the point that, and he still struggles with depression. I don't thank you, Jesus, for delivering me from that. But at the time I did, and it was bad. So I would be like, I could probably go kill myself right now, and you would not care. And then he'd be like, yes, I would. And I'm like, no, but you wouldn't though, because you don't even care right now. And so that cycle it just plummeted until it was all just a mess and nothing was good and the parenting was bad. And then enter in every evil work, because that is exactly what happened. Child was affected. And then after that is when we went to church, because Joel was affected. I had just had Jolene, and so it was maybe like a week or so before I lost my brain. I decided I'm going to go to Austin just by myself. And I took off because I was like, well, she's not even breastfeeding. I need a second. And so I left for 2 days. And I came back. On the drive back, I told him, when I get home, I need you to get your stuff and go. And then I don't even remember if he was like, no, we're going to talk about this. That's what he said. He's like, no, we're going to talk about this. And I was like, but there's nothing to talk about. I mean, I've been screaming at you how I am unhappy. I've been telling you how I need you to change things and do things differently and how I need help, and you don't care. And so I walk in the door, and he was calling somebody to come pick him up, and then he left. Yeah, he left. And it was, at that point, it was just, I loved him, but I was not in love with him. I did not like who he was as a person. We had lost so many friends because of his anger, and the arrogance. And I was like, hey, my expectation is here. I thought you were safe. I thought you were like a steadfast thing, and you're not. So I need you to go, because now I feel like I can do this by myself. And so I had trained myself, really had fooled myself into thinking I could, because realistically speaking, I was not working. So how I was going to do it, I don't know. And then I called my grandma, my great grandma, who is the only person with any sense, I guess. I don't know. And I called her, and she's 90. At this point, she's like 92 years old. And I'm like, Grandma, I kicked him out. And she's like, why would you do that? And I was like, because he doesn't even love me, and I don't love him, and he was doing such and such, and yada yada. And she's like, you could have told him to sleep on the couch. You could have told him you just didn't even want to talk to him. You did not displace him from his home. And I was like, well, he didn't care anyway. And just in my head, I'm like, but he didn't care. And she was like, you call him and you tell him to come back. If she had not told me, and if I had not respected her so much that I cared about what she said, if she had not told me to call him back, I would not have called him back. I would not have told him to come home. I would have been like, hey, you're fine on so-and-so's couch. Stay over there. Because he left me the car, and while we were separated, he was still paying the bills because he wanted the kids to not be moved from their home. And I'm just, pay for my life and do all the things, and I'm going to listen to you. And just awful person. And then so I called him back, and I was like, hey, you have to come back. But I did not say it because she told me. I said, I need you to come back home because I'm going to go back to work. So I need you to watch the kids on the days that you're off, because he's been on shift work since we moved back. And he was like, okay. So it was a weird, we were separated, but we lived together.
It's like cohabitation.
It was so weird. It was very weird. And then mind you, we're still human, and we're married. There's no reason not to have sex. So it was just.
It was very, very weird.
He was like, sleep with me, but don't sleep in my bed. I'm cooking dinner, but I'm not going to serve you. You need the car today? Don't care, I'm going to use the car. It was very...
The cool thing, and I will say that the cool thing in all of that, though, is you see the seeds of God's character in that. Mm-hmm. Because y'all are still serving each other to a certain degree, but you're still mad.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't like you, but I'm going to serve you.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but that's what in the moment, you couldn't see that, though.
No.
But that's 50,000 foot hindsight, right? And so the fact that, hey, you asked me to leave, I'm leaving, I'm not going to cause this ruckus, right? But I still care. I'm still paying the bills. I'm still taking responsibility. Those are all godly traits in an ungodly situation, right? And I'm not picking on you, but I'm trying to give people hope too, because you see him through all of it. Mm-hmm. Because then the next question that most people, if they're in that situation, are saying, well, God, where were you?
Yes.
He was right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
The fact that you didn't go kill yourself. Mm-hmm. The fact that your great-grandma gave you that advice and you listened. Mm-hmm. Right? The fact that you came back. Mm-hmm. The fact that, you see God through all of it. He's still there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, though, because it's not unicorns and rainbows, we're like, well, God, you abandoned me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's farthest from the truth. He's with you all the time. And that's another page in here. Let me see if I can find something I can read.
Where'd y'all get the book in case there's some first responders or vets that want to get one? Is it online? Or I know y'all did a class, but did they have it online, do you know?
So actually, when we went to Chesed Marriage, what is it? A Weekend to Remember.
Oh, yeah.
Crew Military. They always have a booth there, and they give this class, and it's ongoing. I know they do it in person in San Antonio, but if you don't live in that area, you just get on Zoom calls. They send you everything. They send you the books, and it's
what's the website? Crew military.
Crew military, but it's crumilitary.com. Yeah.
I can give you the website after.
We can put it in.
Yeah. No, actually, here it says, it was on the page actually. It says, many of us grew up hearing Bible stories about Noah building the ark, Moses crossing the Red Sea, David slaying Goliath. But as we have faced our Goliaths in our lives, we have often found ourselves in the situation where God didn't pull us from the hardship. Sometimes things got worse. This may have challenged our childhood faith and left us wondering if God even existed or heard our cries for help. But if we actually look at the majority of the stories in the Bible, we find numerous people who weren't immediately delivered from their enemy or set free upon first request.
True.
And it goes on like Daniel, Job, Lazarus, Jesus, like
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yeah.
They didn't get pulled from. They were in the fire,
Yeah. Get pulled from it.
Exactly.
but they were protected while they were in it.
And we look back now because we still talk about our past. Like, hey man, we've been through some stuff. Because we talk to couples at church and they're just like, oh well, y'all are so young. It's like, but y'all seem so mature. It's like,
Yeah, because y'all been through so much.
we've been through so much, and us now, I wouldn't have pictured our relationship being what it is 2 years ago.
And I know I've been in and out, but whenever
shout out to you
By the
for
way,
taking care
I
of
was gonna
kids.
say. By the way, thank
Shout
you.
out to
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
So we're filming it with 6 kids or 5 kids, right on the other side of the wall, entertaining them with popcorn and movie, so we can film this. And so my gracious wife has been managing
No.
that because when they scream, it echoes through the tile. So it.
I will say, I don't know how much long after y'all decided, but y'all did start coming to church.
We're
And it
right at that
wasn't
point
long.
right
Okay, it wasn't long after y'all actually started serving.
Yeah.
And then you've actually also, didn't y'all teach like a session on marriage
We
class?
led a group, the Art
Yeah.
of Marriage.
We when we first started coming to church, we were still separated, and to this day, a lot of people don't know that.
I remember you telling us that.
Yeah, I've told people, and they're like, "What?" And like, yeah, we're separated for at least I can't even tell you.
Yeah.
For a while. But we would come to church and we'd put on this front where like we were still together. We would still hold hands and sit by each other, and it's like we weren't together.
How did you hear about the church?
So after I had asked him to leave, and let me see, I had told him, come back.
Facebook.
It was Facebook, but it was because I was looking for counseling because because my great grandma was like, obviously you don't know what you're doing. And I was like, no, you're right, I don't know what I'm doing, because I got pregnant at 19 and then I got married at 20, and like I was just like, oh, this is
I'm
so
doing
fun.
the best I can,
Yeah.
Granny.
I've only been doing this for 2 days. And she had told me to call him back, whatever, and she said, you need to talk to him. And then she just like tore into me, and she was like, you are so disrespectful. How dare you remove him from his home? Are you even listening to him? You're supposed to forgive him. And she was like, women are supposed to be soft-hearted, and you're not being that way to him. And I was like, well, I thought you were gonna be on my side. Like, I thought you were gonna be like, oh my gosh, my granddaughter's just being emotionally mistreated, whatever. And she was like, you're supposed to have a soft heart. You're supposed to be forgiving. Even if you feel like you're forgiving him more than he forgives you, you're always supposed to forgive him. And I was like, but you don't even know what he did, Grandma. You don't even know how he wronged me. And so she said, well, if you can't figure it out, you need to go talk to somebody. And I was like, okay. So, and I mean, she was just very stern about it. She's German.
Which is
and
godly
super,
counsel, though.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's what you need in your life, though, because sometimes you don't want to hear what you want to hear. You need to hear what you need to hear. All right, you need to hear what you should hear.
So, yeah. And so I said, okay, and I told him, hey, we can give this one more shot. And this is it. And if you can't get it together, I don't want to be with you. And the whole time, right, you're carrying your trauma behind all this, your emotional walls. But we lived, and I can speak for both of us, we lived for being the victim. But look what happened to me. I have a right to feel this way. I have a right to lash out when something new happens, and if you can't handle it, like, that's on you. I don't have to process anything in any sort of way. I've been through so much. This is just, it was just adding on to, well, I've been through this and now I'm going through this. So I'm entitled to just express my emotion however I see fit, and that's where I was messing up at.
Our marriage was full of blame shifting and entitlement at this point.
It was a lot,
that's all it
and
was.
victim mindset, victim mindset on both sides. And so we went to. I looked up counseling, and mind you, I was not working, and he was still paying everything, and I was like, I'm not gonna get a job. You messed this up, and so. And let's talk about man, sometimes I'm like, I don't even think that I would be my own friend. And so
I don't even think I'd be friends with myself.
It was real bad. And so I had told him, hey, we need to find counseling. And so I looked up somebody, and it was insanely expensive. And at this time, he was making maybe like $21 an hour or something like that. Not even maybe. And so I knew we couldn't afford it. And so I said, well, how... I'm so sorry, Siri and Anna. I was like, where can I get free counseling?
Hey, that's the reality, though, right?
That is.
The reality is that's
is.
why churches provide that. And you laugh, but it's real, because people that are at that point, I can't tell you how many couples we've talked to that Megan can attest to. They're like, we're done, but we're going to try one more time, and we're going to go to church.
Yeah.
And when they fully commit to the Lord, I'm not going to say the church, when they fully commit to the Lord.
When they fully commit to the Lord and what that looks like.
What does that look like?
I mean, just being sold out, going to church, not just when you feel like it, going to church when it's hard, going to church when you've just had a fight, going to church when
you're fighting in the parking lot on the way.
You're fighting in the parking lot. I mean, going to church, and it's not necessarily about the going. It's knowing and being surrounded, because God inhabits the praises of his people.
It's the decision.
It's the obedience, right? And Grant had actually talked about that not too long ago. It's that the Father doesn't look at the quality of how we do something. He just wants to see our heart turned towards him. So whenever he asked Graham, go clean your room, and Graham just comes back and he's frustrated and he's tired. He's like, I just don't want to do it. Grant isn't asking him for perfection. He's just asking for his heart, right? And that's what the Lord wants in just in people in general. And I will say this again, the Lord inhabits the praises of his people. I'm all about, and I'm thankful that COVID opened doors for certain things, the biggest thing being virtual, right? And I'm not a saint. There have been mornings where, I have like explosive diarrhea and I don't want to be at church because I'm sick, I don't feel good. And so I stay home and we watch church from home, but there's something about being with community and being with the body. And worshiping with the body. There's things that have been literally been broken off for people when they come into a building. And this is not a plug for Life Foursquare Church. However, if you are looking for one, you are more than welcome. But this is just a plug to find a community that you can grow in. Not that you feel connected, but that you can grow in, because growth is uncomfortable. When we were kids, you would kick in the night because you would go through growing pains. It's uncomfortable. But growth is going to get you out of your place of where you've been stuck.
Right.
And it's going to, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And it's going to open doors of opportunity where you can meet people that you would have never met on the street. And you can engage in conversations and have those opportunities, and those doors open up where, hey, it's in a marriage or just even in a person, but I'm struggling with something. Have you been through this before? And it's just the strength of community.
And I say that, dude, and don't feel bad. Like, that's what that service is there for.
Oh, yeah,
right?
No.
And that's why the church does it. And that's part of the ministry. That's part of the ministers, right? I mean, it's like, think about Wednesday night.
Yeah.
How much we spend as a church body on food. We feed every person on campus, and it's almost 1,000 people every Wednesday night. And nobody leaves without eating unless they choose to not eat, right? And then we also have leftovers for them to take, right? That's a conscious effort to, one, make sure people are fed physically, because if you can't meet physical needs, people aren't going to listen for long, right? But the reality is you feed them because they need it. And there's people that come on Wednesday night solely because they can get food.
Yep.
There's a certain population that comes that they live in their car and whatever, but they come because they can get a restroom and they can get food, and they have 3 hours of air conditioning. They're not in the mosquitoes, and they can sit and talk to people as a peer and not look down upon. And I'm not saying y'all are in that spot, but I'm saying the church knows that, and that's okay because God loves everybody that's there.
But I love that you said that though. Like I love that you said
Because that's real. I mean,
and it was to a point where it was like I need help and I want help.
But this
like,
is where
I
I'm
need
at.
help,
And
but
this
I
is-
want help, and this is my option.